Boys sell their toys to help their sick mother, until a millionaire changed their fate. Sarah Miller felt her legs tremble as she tried to get out of bed once again that morning. The medicine the doctor had prescribed cost nearly $300, and she didn't even have half that amount saved. That's when she heard the soft voices of Emily and Ethan in the kitchen, talking about selling their toys to get the money for their mother's medication. The 11-year-old girl carefully arranged toy cars and dolls in a cardboard box, while her 8-year-old brother clutched his brown stuffed bear, resisting the idea of parting with it. "Eth, you know Mom needs it, right?" Emily whispered, running her hand through her younger brother's curly hair. "I know, Em, but Boo was a gift from Dad before he left," Ethan replied, squeezing the stuffed animal even tighter against his chest. Sarah pretended to still be asleep, but tears streamed silently down her face. Ever since Mike had left 2 years ago to work in another city and never contacted them again, she had been struggling alone to support her children. Now, with this kidney disease leaving her weaker by the day, she could no longer manage the housekeeping jobs that had once provided for the family. The children left the house carrying the heavy box toward the shopping district in Portland, California. Emily had chosen that spot because she always saw well-dressed people coming in and out of the stores. Ethan walked beside her, still holding his bear, but now with determination in his small eyes. They set up near the pharmacy where Sarah always bought her medicine, spreading a cloth on the ground and carefully arranging each toy. Emily placed a cardboard sign that read "Toys for Sale" in colorful crayon. "How much do you think we can get, Em?" Ethan asked, watching people hurry past. "I don't know, Eth, but we have to try." The first moments were discouraging. People glanced over, some with pity, others with indifference, but no one stopped to ask about prices. An elderly woman even approached, picked up a few toys, but left without buying anything. Then a tall man in an impeccable navy blue suit walked by, talking hurriedly on the phone. Richard Parker was late for an important meeting at his law office when he nearly tripped over the toys scattered on the ground. "Hey, you can't be here," he said irritably, slipping his phone into his pocket. "You're blocking the way." Emily quickly stood up, wiping her hands on her simple dress. "Sorry, sir. We're just trying to sell our toys." "Why?" Richard asked, noticing the determination in the girl's eyes. "Our mum's sick and needs medicine. It costs $300 and we don't have that much," Emily explained without looking away. Ethan stepped closer to his sister, still hugging his bear, and added in a choked voice, "Mom says she doesn't need it, but we see her crying in pain when she thinks no one's watching." Richard felt something tighten in his chest, but he quickly pushed the feeling aside. He had his own problems to deal with and couldn't get involved with 2 random kids. "Look, I'm sorry, but you need to find another spot. You can't stay here," he said, already walking away. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. The children gathered their toys and moved to a nearby square where they set up their little display once again. Ethan finally placed the stuffed bear next to the other toys, but his hands were visibly shaking. All morning, they had only managed to sell 3 small toy cars for $10 each. The sun was scorching, and they hadn't brought any water or snacks, but they didn't want to go home without at least some of the money. "Em, I'm thirsty," Ethan complained, wiping his sweaty face with his shirt sleeve. "Just hang in there a little longer, Eth. Someone will still buy our toys." At that moment, an elegant woman approached, accompanied by a girl about Emily's age. The woman examined a few items while her daughter pointed to a doll with curly hair. "Mom, can I get this one?" the girl asked. "How much is it?" the woman asked Emily. $20, Mom." The woman rummaged through her purse, but only found $50 bills. She glanced at the kids, thought about asking for change, but realized they probably wouldn't have any. She put the money away and walked off with her daughter, who protested the whole way. Ethan sat on the curb, discouraged. Emily walked over and wrapped her arm around her brother's shoulders. "We're not giving up, okay? Mom needs us." "But no one wants to buy our toys, Em. What if we don't get the money?" Emily didn't know how to respond. She was starting to doubt whether they could raise the necessary amount just by selling toys, but she couldn't show weakness in front of her younger brother. Meanwhile, Richard couldn't focus on the meeting. The image of the two children determined to help their sick mother wouldn't leave his mind. He remembered when he was a child, and his own mother had gone through tough health struggles. Back then, he was too young to help in any real way, and it had always left a wound in his heart. He decided to stop by the square after work. When he got there, he found the kids still sitting beside the toy box, which was now much emptier than it had been that morning. "How was your day?" he asked as he approached. "We sold some toys, but we're still short on money," Emily replied, unable to hide her disappointment. Richard looked at the remaining items and noticed the little bear Ethan was now clutching even tighter. "What about that one? Is it not for sale?" Ethan looked at the bear, then at his sister, and finally at Richard. "It is, sir." "How much do you want to pay for it?" "How much are you asking?" $50, Emily said quickly, knowing it was a lot for a used toy, but hoping the man would agree. Richard pulled a $100 bill from his wallet and handed it to Emily. "Keep the change." The kids exchanged glances, stunned. Ethan handed the bear to Richard with teary eyes, but tried to stay strong. "Thank you, sir. You'll take good care of Boo, right?" "I will," Richard promised, tucking the bear under his arm. With the money from the bear plus what they'd already made that day, the kids now had $180. They still needed $120 more to cover the cost of the medicine. "We'll come back tomorrow to sell the rest," Emily said, carefully putting the money away. "Wait," Richard said. "Where do you live? I can give you a ride." The kids hesitated. Sarah always told them not to accept rides from strangers, but the man had bought the bear and seemed kind. "That's okay, sir. We know how to get home," Emily replied politely. Richard respected their decision and watched as they walked away carrying the remaining toy box. He stood in the square for a few minutes, staring at the bear in his hands and wondering why he'd gotten involved in the first place. When they got home, Emily and Ethan found Sarah lying on the couch in their small living room. She had tried to make lunch, but her weakness got the best of her halfway through. "Mum, we got $180, announced Ethan, running to show her the money. Sarah sat down on the couch with difficulty, looking at the cash in her children's hands. "Where did this come from?" "You didn't do anything wrong, did you?" "Of course not, Mom. We sold our toys," explained Emily. "Tomorrow we'll sell the rest and get enough for your medicine." Sarah pulled both children into a tight hug, trying to hide her tears. "You didn't have to do this. Mom will figure out a way to get the money." "But we want to help, Mom. We're a family, and family helps each other," said Ethan, repeating a phrase he'd often heard Sarah say. That night, Sarah barely slept. The pain in her kidneys was worse, and she knew she couldn't delay treatment much longer. At the same time, her heart ached seeing her children giving up their few belongings to help her. The next day, the kids woke up early and got ready for another day of sales. Sarah tried to convince them not to go, but their minds were made up. "Mum, today's Saturday. There'll be more people out," Emily argued. "We'll sell everything." They set up in the same spot at the square and began arranging the remaining toys. There were 3 dolls, 2 toy cars, some board games, and a collection of colorful cards Ethan loved to collect. The foot traffic was heavier on a Saturday, but sales started slow. A mother with 2 young children approached and bought one of the dolls for $10. Later, a teenager interested in cards bought Ethan's entire collection for $20. It was mid-afternoon when Richard showed up again. He'd spent the night thinking about the kids and decided to check on their second day of sales. "How are sales today?" he asked as he approached. "Much better than yesterday," Emily replied excitedly. "We already have $215. Just $85 to go then." "Yeah," said Ethan, "and we still have these toys left to sell." Richard looked over the remaining items and got an idea. "How about I buy everything that's left? How much do you want for the lot?" The children exchanged glances, trying to calculate a fair price. $100? Emily suggested hesitantly. "Deal," said Richard, pulling the money from his wallet. Ethan and Emily couldn't believe it. They finally had the full amount for their mom's medicine. They impulsively hugged Richard, who was moved by the children's genuine gratitude. "Thank you so much, sir. Mom's going to get better now," said Ethan, his eyes shining. "What's your name?" Emily asked. "Richard. And you?" "I'm Emily, and he's Ethan. Our mom's name is Sarah." Richard helped the kids pack the toys into 2 large bags and offered them a ride again, but they preferred to walk to the pharmacy, which was close to the square. When they arrived, Emily approached the counter with the money in hand. "Good afternoon, we're here to pick up our mom's medicine, Sarah Miller." The pharmacist, Mr. Robert, knew the family well and was aware of their financial struggles. "Hi, kids. Did you get all the money?" "We did," Ethan said proudly, showing the bills. Mr. Robert counted the money, but his expression changed. "Kids, I'm so sorry, but the price of the medicine went up. It's $350 now." The smiles vanished from Emily and Ethan's faces. They had worked so hard, sold all their toys, and still, it wasn't enough. "But last week you said it was $300, Emily protested. "I know, sweetheart, but the supplier raised the price. There's nothing I can do." The children left the pharmacy with their heads hanging low. They had been so close to being able to help their mother, and now they were still $50 short. "What are we going to do now, Em?" asked Ethan, his voice trembling. "I don't know, Eth. We've already sold everything." They sat on the park bench, disheartened. That's when Richard, who had been watching from a distance, approached. "Why the long faces? I thought you'd be celebrating." Emily explained about the price increase for the medicine, and Richard could see the frustration and despair in the children's eyes. "Just $50?" he asked. "It's a lot of money for us, Mr. Richard," said Ethan. "We don't have anything left to sell." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now, back to the story. Richard took $50 from his wallet and handed it to Emily. "Here, now you can buy your mother's medicine." "But we can't just take it for free," Emily protested. "Mom always taught us we have to earn things through our own hard work." "You already have," Richard said. "You sold all your toys. This money is just a loan. When your mother gets better and can work again, you can pay me back." The children hesitated, but necessity won out. They took the money and ran back to the pharmacy, where they finally managed to buy Sarah's medicine. When they got home, they found Sarah even weaker, struggling just to get out of bed. "Mom, we did it!" Ethan shouted, holding up the bag of medicine. Sarah opened her eyes and saw her children by her bedside, holding the medication she so desperately needed. She couldn't hold back her tears. "How did you get so much money?" "We sold all our toys, Mom," Emily explained, "and a very kind man helped us with the rest." "What man?" Sarah asked, concerned. "Mr. Richard. He bought our toys for a fair price, and when the medicine got more expensive, he loaned us the money we were missing." Sarah worried that her children had taken money from a stranger, but she was too weak to question it at the time. The important thing was that now she could start her treatment. Emily poured a glass of water and helped her mother take the first pill. Ethan snuggled up next to her in bed, as he always did when Sarah wasn't feeling well. In the days that followed, Sarah began to show signs of improvement. Her pain lessened, and she was able to get up and prepare meals for her children again. The kids were overjoyed to see their mother regaining her strength. A week later, Richard decided to visit the family to see how Sarah was responding to the treatment. He had spent those days thinking deeply about his own life. Despite all his professional success, he felt something was missing. Seeing the love and dedication the children had for their mother made him question his own priorities. He knocked on the door of the modest house where the family lived. Sarah answered, surprised to see a well-dressed man at her doorstep. "You must be Sarah. I'm Richard. I met your children selling toys in the park." "Oh, Mr. Richard," Sarah said, inviting him inside. "The kids have told me so much about you. Thank you so much for helping them. How are you feeling?" "Much better, thank God. And thanks to my children, and to you too." Richard looked around the simple but clean and tidy home. He noticed there was no television, and the only toys he saw were a few coloring books on the living room table. "The kids really did sell all their toys," he remarked. "Yes," said Sarah, with a mix of pride and sadness in her voice. "I tried to convince them not to do it, but they're very stubborn once they've made up their minds." Emily and Ethan arrived from school just then and were happy to see Richard. "Mr. Richard!" shouted Ethan, running to greet him. "How are you? How was school today? It was good, replied Emily. We told our teacher we managed to help our mum, and she said we were very brave. Richard talked with the family for over an hour. He learned that Sarah had worked as a housekeeper, but lost her jobs when the illness began to show. Mike, the children's father, had left to work on an oil rig, promising to send money, but they never heard from him again. Have you looked for other jobs? Richard asked. I'm still recovering, but I plan to start looking again next week. I need to work to pay back the money you lent me. Don't worry about that now. What's important is for you to get better. As Richard was leaving, he turned to Sarah. Have you ever worked in an office before? No, I never had the chance. I've always worked in private homes. Would you be interested in learning? I have a law office and always need help with organizing, filing, things like that. Sarah was surprised by the offer. I don't know, Mr. Richard. I don't have experience in that field. We can teach you. What matters is the willingness to learn and being responsible. And from what I see here, you have those qualities in abundance. Sarah thanked him for the offer and said she'd think it over carefully. In the days that followed, Richard couldn't stop thinking about the Miller family. There was something about the children's determination and Sarah's dignity that deeply moved him. He decided he wanted to do more for them. On Monday, he returned to their home with a more concrete proposal. Sarah, I've thought more about our conversation. I'd like to offer you a job at my office. The hours would be Monday to Friday, 9 to 4, so you can pick up the kids from school. The starting salary would be $1,200. Sarah was speechless. It was more than she made as a housekeeper, and with fixed hours. I accept, Mr. Richard. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Great. You can start next Monday. I'll introduce you to my secretary, Barbara, who'll teach you everything you need to know. The children were overjoyed at the news. Finally, their mom would have a stable job and wouldn't have to worry so much about money. On her first day of work, Sarah arrived at the office nervous but determined to do well. Barbara, a kind woman in her 60s, welcomed her warmly and began teaching her the basics. Don't worry, dear, Barbara said. Everyone here started from scratch at some point. Mr. Richard is very patient and understanding. Sarah adapted quickly to the new environment. Her dedication and attention to detail impressed everyone in the office. Within 2 weeks, she'd mastered the filing system and was helping with more complex tasks. One day, while organizing old documents, Sarah came across a folder with newspaper clippings. They were articles about cases the office had won over the years. One report left her stunned. It described a case where Richard had represented a family suing a doctor for misdiagnosis. The doctor had delayed identifying a kidney disease, and the patient nearly died because of it. Sarah reread the article several times. The illness mentioned was exactly the same one she had, and the doctor mentioned was Dr. Thompson, the same one who had treated her when the symptoms first appeared and said it wasn't serious. She was confused and disturbed by this discovery. Could it be a coincidence? Why was Richard helping her and the children? Was there some connection between her case and that lawsuit? Sarah decided not to mention the discovery at that moment, but she spent the rest of the day uneasy, trying to understand if there was any link between her situation and Richard's work. When she got home, she found the kids doing homework at the kitchen table. They were excited and told her about their day at school, but Sarah could barely pay attention, still thinking about the article she'd found. "Mom, are you okay?" Emily asked, noticing Sarah seemed distant. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm just a little tired from the new job." "Mr. Richard is nice, right, Mom?" Ethan said. "We're lucky we met him." Sarah agreed, but inside she kept questioning Richard's true intentions. Was it just kindness, or was there something more behind all that help? The next morning, Sarah arrived at the office determined to clear up her doubts. She waited for a moment when Richard was alone in his office and knocked on the door. "Excuse me, Dr. Richard. Can I talk to you?" "Of course, Sarah. Come in. How are you adjusting to the job?" "Very well, thank you. Actually, I wanted to talk about something else." Sarah took a deep breath before continuing. "Yesterday, while organizing the files, I found an article about a case you won. It was about a medical mistake related to the same illness I have." Richard's expression changed. He looked visibly uncomfortable. "Ah, that article," he said, trying to stay calm. Yes, it was an important case for the firm. The doctor mentioned in the article was the same one who treated me at the beginning of my illness, Dr. Thompson. Richard stood up from his chair and walked to the window, turning his back to Sarah. Sarah, there are some things I haven't told you. What do you mean? Richard turned and looked at her. Dr. Thompson was my father. Sarah's legs felt weak. She sat in the chair across from Richard's desk, trying to process what she'd just heard. Your father? Yes. My father was accused of medical malpractice many times during his career. The case you read about was just one of many. He had problems with alcohol, and it affected his work. Sarah stayed silent, trying to understand where Richard was going with this. When I saw you and the kids in that situation and found out the illness had been misdiagnosed by Dr. Thompson, I felt responsible. Responsible. My father ruined many lives because of his negligence. He never admitted his mistakes, never apologized. When he passed away 3 years ago, I inherited not just his assets, but also the weight of all the people he hurt. Sarah began to understand. Richard wasn't helping out of pure kindness. There was guilt behind his actions. So you're only helping me out of pity, because you feel guilty for your father's mistakes? No, Richard answered quickly. I mean, it started that way, but now I see you all as family. Your kids reminded me of what really matters in life. Sarah stood up, clearly shaken by the revelation. I need some time to process all this, Dr. Richard. Sarah, please don't let this affect your work here. You're doing really well, and the kids are happy seeing you work. I'll finish the week, but I need to think about whether I want to keep working here knowing all this. Sarah left Richard's office and spent the rest of the day working mechanically, unable to focus properly on her tasks. Mrs. Barbara noticed something was wrong but respected her colleague's space. When she got home, Sarah was visibly upset. The kids immediately noticed something had happened. Mum, what's wrong? Did something happen at work? Asked Emily, concerned. Sarah sat on the couch and pulled both children close. Kids, I found out today that Mr. Richard has a connection to our family that I didn't know about. What kind of connection? Asked Ethan. Sarah explained in simple terms about the medical error that had worsened her illness and the fact that Richard was the son of the responsible doctor. So Mr. Richard is only helping us because he feels guilty? Asked Emily, disappointed. I don't know, sweetheart. He said that's how it started, but now he genuinely cares for us. And do you believe him? Ethan wanted to know. Sarah took a moment before answering. I don't know what to believe right now, kids. All I know is that you sold your toys to help me, and that came from the heart. Mr. Richard might have had other motivations. The children were confused and sad. They had grown fond of Richard and couldn't understand why adults made things so complicated. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She felt betrayed, even though she knew Richard wasn't obligated to share his father's past right away. At the same time, she recognized that he had been genuinely kind to her and the kids. The next day, Sarah went to work as usual, but avoided any contact with Richard beyond what was strictly professional. He noticed the change and respected the space she needed. During lunch, Mrs. Barbara invited Sarah to eat together at the little park near the office. Sarah, I don't know what happened between you and Dr. Richard yesterday, but I can see you're both hurting. You noticed? Dear, I've worked with Dr. Richard for over 15 years. I know him very well. And ever since you came into his life, he's been different. Different how? More human, you know. He's always been a good boss, but so focused on work. Now he asks about people, cares about the employees' problems. Yesterday he was worried all day, couldn't concentrate. Sarah listened carefully to Mrs. Barbara's words. I know it's none of my business, the secretary continued, but can I tell you something about his past? Sarah nodded. Dr. Richard's father really caused a lot of suffering for many families. He was a difficult man, drank too much, and never took responsibility. Dr. Richard suffered a lot because of it as a child and teenager. How so? His mother got sick when he was 16. His father, who was a doctor, took took too long to give the right diagnosis because he was always drunk. By the time they found out what she had, it was too late. Sarah felt a tightness in her chest hearing that story. "She didn't make it?" she asked softly. "No. And Dr. Richard carried that guilt his whole life, even though it wasn't his fault. He studied law specifically to sue negligent doctors like his own father. Did he ever forgive his father? Not completely. They had a very difficult relationship until the end. Dr. Richard always said he'd one day make up for all the harm his father had caused. Sarah began to understand Richard's motivations better. He wasn't just trying to clear his conscience. He was trying to heal a deep wound from his own childhood. Mrs. Barbara, do you think I should talk to him? I think you both need to understand each other, dear. The kids really like him, and he's grown very fond of you all too. When they returned to the office, Sarah decided she would talk to Richard before leaving. She waited until the end of the workday and knocked on his office door. "Mr. Richard, can we talk?" "Of course," he said, visibly nervous. Sarah entered and sat in the same chair as the day before. "I spoke with Mrs. Barbara today, and she told me about your mother." Richard lowered his eyes, clearly emotional at the mention of his mother. "I'm so sorry for what happened to her." "Thank you," Richard murmured. "Now I understand better why you wanted to help us. It wasn't just guilt over your father's mistakes. It was also a way to try and save a family like you couldn't save your own." Richard looked up and met Sarah's understanding gaze. "Yes, that's exactly it. When I saw your kids selling their toys, I saw myself desperately trying to help my mother and failing. But there's a difference," Sarah said gently. "Your kids succeeded. They saved me, and you were a big part of that. Sarah, I want you to know my help isn't just out of guilt or trying to make up for the past. The three of you have changed my life too." "How so?" "I had become a very closed-off person, focused only on work, with no family, no real connections. Meeting you reminded me how important it is to have people to care for, and who care for us." Sarah could tell Richard was being genuine. "Mr. Richard, I want to keep working here, but I need our relationship to be transparent from now on." "Of course. No more secrets. And I want you to know that no matter what your father did in the past, I'm grateful for everything you've done for us. The kids are grateful too." Richard was moved by Sarah's words. "Thank you for giving me a second chance." When Sarah got home that night, she told the kids about her conversation with Richard. They were relieved to hear their mum had decided to keep her job and that Richard would still be their friend. In the months that followed, the bond between the Miller family and Richard grew stronger. Sarah excelled at work and got a raise. The kids got new toys, but now they bought them with the money their mom earned. Richard became a father figure to Emily and Ethan. He took them out on weekends, helped with homework, and was always there for the important moments in their lives. One day, 6 months after Sarah started working at the office, Richard arrived with a special proposal. "Sarah, I've been thinking about expanding the firm. I'd like to create a social services department to help families in need who require legal representation." "What a wonderful idea. And I'd like you to lead that department. You understand these families' needs better than anyone." Sarah was surprised and honored. "But I don't have the qualifications for that, Mr. Richard. We'll arrange the training. What matters is that you have the compassion and life experience to connect with these people." Sarah accepted the challenge and threw herself into studying. Richard paid for her social work course, and soon the new department was up and running. Sarah's work became her mission. She helped dozens of families access medical care, social benefits, and free legal representation. Every case she solved felt like a personal victory. One day, a woman came to the office with a situation very much like Sarah's own past. Her daughter was sick, and she couldn't afford the medicine. Sarah recognized the struggle immediately. "Mrs. Jennifer, I understand exactly what you're going through," said Sarah. "I went through the same situation a year ago. How did you handle it?" "My children sold all their toys to buy my medicine, and a very special person helped us when we needed it most." Sarah managed to secure a donation of medication for Mrs. Jennifer's daughter and even arranged a job for her at a company partnered with the office. When Mrs. Jennifer left the office with everything settled, Richard said to Sarah, "You saved another family today." "We saved them," Sarah corrected. "This is only possible because you created this opportunity." A year and a half after their first meeting in the square, Richard made a proposal that surprised the entire Miller family. He had bought a bigger house in a better neighborhood and wanted Sarah and the children to move in, not as tenants, but as family. "Richard, this is very serious," Sarah said. "The kids might get confused about your role in their lives." "Sarah, I love the three of you as if you were my own family, and I know you care for me too. Why don't we make it official?" "Official how?" "Marry me, Sarah. Let's be a real family." Sarah was moved by the proposal, but needed to be sure Richard understood all the implications. "Richard, are you certain you want to take on the responsibility of being a father to my children? I already am their father in every way except on paper. I want to make it official. And if things don't work out between us, even if we didn't work as a couple, I would never abandon Emily and Ethan. They're my children in my heart." Sarah talked to the kids about Richard's proposal. They were overjoyed at the possibility of having a complete family again. "Mum, is Mr. Richard going to be our dad?" Ethan asked excitedly. "If you want him to be, and if I accept his proposal." "I do," Ethan said without hesitation. "Me too," Emily agreed. "He's always taken care of us like a dad would." Sarah accepted Richard's marriage proposal. The ceremony was simple, held at the neighborhood church with Mrs. Barbara and some colleagues from the office in attendance. Emily and Ethan were the ring bearers, beaming with happiness. 2 years later, the family was fully settled. Sarah had completed her degree in social work and was respected in her field. Emily was excelling in school and dreamed of becoming a lawyer like her stepfather. Ethan had developed an interest in medicine and wanted to help sick people just as his mother had been helped. Richard legally adopted the children, who now carried his last name. The house was always full of joy, a far cry from the loneliness Richard had lived with for so many years. One day, Emily found an old box in the attic of their new home. Inside was the stuffed bear Ethan had sold to help pay for his mother's medicine. "Dad Richard kept Boo all this time," she shouted, running to show her brother. Ethan hugged the bear he had loved so much, but now with a different feeling. He didn't need the toy to feel safe anymore. He had a complete family to take care of him. "You can keep him, Em," Ethan said. "I don't need Boo to feel brave anymore." That night at dinner, Richard looked at his family and felt whole. Sarah was talking about a difficult case she'd resolved at work. Emily was showing off her excellent school grades, and Ethan was discussing the medical book he'd been reading. "I have a confession to make," Richard said suddenly. Everyone stopped talking and looked at him curiously. "When I saw you selling toys in that square, I never imagined you'd change my life so completely." "What do you mean, Dad?" Emily asked. "I thought I was helping you all because of what my father had done, but in truth you were the ones who saved me. You saved me from loneliness, taught me what real love is, and gave me a family." Sarah held Richard Parker's hand across the table. "We saved each other," she said. "Because that's what family does, takes care of one another." Ethan, now 10 years old and much more mature, made an observation that moved everyone. "You know what I think is the most amazing thing? We sold our toys thinking we'd lose everything, but we actually gained so much more than we imagined." "What did we gain, Eth?" Emily asked. "We gained a dad, a complete family, a good home, and most of all, we saved Mom. The toys were just things. What we got was real love." Richard was touched by the boy's words and realized how wise Emily and Ethan had grown despite their young age. "And you know what?" Ethan continued. "If I ever have kids, I'll tell them this story. Kelsey, sometimes you have to let go of some things to gain others that are way more important." Sarah stood up and hugged her son, proud of the person he was becoming. "You two are my greatest pride," she said. "Not just for helping me when I needed it, but for being such brave and generous kids." "And you, Sarah," Richard said, "are the strongest woman I've ever known. Watching you overcome every hardship and still find the energy to help other families inspires me every day." Emily, quieter than usual, finally spoke up. I want to be like you when I grow up. I want to help people like Mom does, and I want to be fair like Dad Richard." "You're already special in your own way, sweetheart," Richard said. "You took care of your mom and your brother when they needed you most. That shows you already have a huge heart." That night, after the kids went to bed, Sarah and Richard stayed in the living room talking about how their lives had changed. "Have you ever imagined what our lives would be like if that day in the square hadn't happened?" Sarah asked. "I tried not to think too much about the future before I met you," Richard admitted. "My life was just work, money, career success, but it was empty." "Mine was a constant struggle," Sarah said. "I was always worried about the present, unable to dream about the future. Now I can make plans, dream about what's ahead." "What are your dreams now?" "To watch the kids grow up happy and become fulfilled adults, to keep helping families going through what we went through, and to grow old by your side, building beautiful memories together." Richard smiled and pulled Sarah closer on the couch. "You know what I admire most about you?" "What?" "You never lost hope, even in the toughest moments. Even when I offered help and you were suspicious, you kept your dignity and strength. I learned that life always gives you a chance for things to get better. Sometimes the chance comes from where you least expect it." The following year, Richard's office became a benchmark for free legal aid. Sarah led a team of 5 social workers and had helped over 200 families. In one of those families, 2 children were selling candy on the street to help their unemployed father. When Sarah heard about their situation, she immediately remembered her own kids selling toys. She found the father a job through one of the office's clients and arranged scholarships for the children. When the family came to thank her, Sarah was moved by the gratitude in their eyes. "Mrs. Sarah," the children's mother said, "how can we ever repay you for what you've done for us?" "You don't have to repay me anything," Sarah replied. "When you're doing better, help other families going through hard times. That way the chain of kindness continues." This became the philosophy of the department Richard created, helping people so they could help others in the future. 5 years after that first meeting in the park, Emily was 16 and Ethan was 13. Both were excellent students and had a very close relationship with Richard, who had officially become their father. One Sunday afternoon, the family was gathered in the backyard when Richard made a special announcement. "I've decided to start a foundation in honor of my mother and our family." "What kind of foundation?" asked Sarah. "A foundation that will help children whose parents are sick and can't afford medical treatment. We'll offer not just financial support, but also psychological and social care." "What a wonderful idea," said Emily. "Can I help when I turn 18? "Of course you can. In fact, I'm counting on both of you." Ethan, who was now more interested in medicine than ever, asked, "And if I become a doctor, can I work at the foundation too?" "That would be perfect," Richard replied. "Just imagine me handling the legal side, your mom managing social assistance, Emily overseeing general coordination, and you handling medical care. It would be a true family foundation." The idea excited the whole family. They spent the rest of the day discussing how the foundation could work and how many families they could help. A month later, the Hope Foundation was officially established. The first case they took on was a family whose situation was almost identical to what the Millers had gone through. A sick mother and 2 children trying to raise money for medicine by selling their belongings. Sarah personally handled the case and was moved to see how quickly they could resolve a situation that had once felt so hopeless to them. "It's amazing how life comes full circle," she told Richard. "Now we're the ones showing up to help other families the way ours was helped." "And that was only possible because you never gave up," Richard replied. "Emily and Ethan taught me that real love shows in actions, not words." 2 years later, when Ethan turned 15, he asked for a special birthday gift. "Dad Richard, I want to visit all the families the foundation has helped. I want to meet the kids and see how they're doing." "Why?" "Because when I was 8 and selling my toys, I felt so alone. I want these kids to know there are people who care about them." Richard was touched by his son's request and arranged a series of visits to the families supported by the foundation. Ethan talked to the children about their dreams and always made sure they knew they weren't alone. On one of these visits, they met an 8-year-old girl selling flowers on the street to help her sick grandmother. Ethan approached her and said, "Hi, I'm Ethan. When I was your age, I also sold things on the street to help my mum." "Really?" the girl asked, intrigued. "Really? I sold my toys, and you know what I learned?" "What?" "That when you truly love someone, you find the strength to do anything. You must really love your grandma." The girl smiled and nodded. Ethan talked with her for a few minutes and explained how the foundation could help her family. As they were leaving, Sarah said to Richard, "Look how much our boy has grown. He understands these children's pain because he's lived it." "That's what makes me proudest of him," Richard said. "He could have become bitter or selfish because of what he went through, but instead he became more compassionate and generous." "Emily too," Sarah agreed. "She always volunteers to help the mothers of the families we assist. She knows how hard it is to stay strong when you're going through tough times." The end of the story. What a touching story, isn't it? What did you think of Emily, Ethan, and Sarah's journey? Do you believe true love has the power to transform lives like it did for Richard? Share your thoughts with us in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other stories that will move and inspire you. Thank you so much for being here with us.